When I was a law student, I completed multiple clerkships at some of Australia's biggest law firms, and those are what ultimately helped me to land a job as a graduate lawyer in 2025. And in this video today, I'm going to break down the exact reality of what it's like to intern or be a clerk at some of Australia's biggest law firms. So in 2023, I was about to start my first clerkship role in the end of November, start of December, and I was going into a specialist corporate team which predominantly specializes in private M&A, public M&A, and a lot of capital markets and IPO related stuff. So IPO meaning initial public offering. So that sort of work you're dealing with the ASX and ASIC. Now I'll be totally honest, before going into that clerkship, I had absolutely zero experience in terms of that sort of work. The only experience I actually had was studying corporate law in university. And that too, we didn't really touch on those sorts of stuff. It was mainly just doing voluntary administration and all those sorts of stuff that you learn about directors' duties and stuff in a normal corporate law subject. And before starting that clerkship role, I was genuinely nervous and I genuinely didn't think that I'd be capable enough to actually do that sort of work. Especially given it's M&A, it's private, public, you're dealing with a lot of big commercial clients. And I'm thinking to myself, well, I have zero experience of corporate law. Will I actually be able to do that sort of work? And I think for a lot of law students who are about to start clerkships, you kind of get a bit of a sense of that imposter syndrome, and that is totally normal to have. Now, another massive misconception as well before starting as a clerk or an intern is how much you're actually working. And the reality is you're not someone that's going to be overworked and overburdened. You're not going to be putting these insane amount of hours. It's pretty much you go in to your contracted time and you leave at your contracted time, which is usually 8:30 to 5. But I would personally like coming in at 8 o'clock, kind of just getting that vibe of the law firm sort of office and kind of getting in early, being one of the first people in to show that sort of keenness and attitude. And I'd like to leave a few minutes after 5. It really depends on if I have any pending tasks that may carry on a bit late, but usually I wouldn't stay any time past 6 o'clock at the latest. And in terms of the times and the hours you're going to be working as a clerk, it really isn't anything too stressful. So I would not worry about that at all. Now, the type of work you actually do as an intern or a clerk at these law firms is mainly doing a lot of legal research based stuff. So it really depends on what team you're in. So for example, if you're in a litigation based team or you're doing a lot of construction based disputes, a lot of your work is actually very much technical legal research where a partner or a senior lawyer is looking for specific cases, and they might get you as an intern or a clerk to research a particular area or research particular cases where something similar in terms of the work that they're currently dealing with in terms of their client is going through, and they ask you to have a look at a specific case and put together a legal memorandum so that senior lawyer or partner, whoever is giving you that task, can go through that memorandum and kind of get a sense about that case that you've prepared for them. So that's something that is super interesting. It's kind of good in the sense that it's sort of translatable from university to real life, where you actually use some of the research databases that you use in law school, and then you use it at work as a clerk and as an intern, and then you put together a really high level legal memorandum. So in that sense, that's probably one of the things that is actually transferable from uni into real life work at a law firm. Now, in terms of legal memorandums and how to write some really, really high level legal memorandums for university and also in law firms, I do have a separate video on some of the techniques that I personally use and I used as well as a law student. So if you want to go and check that video out, it'll be one of the links in the description. And I also have a community where I personally help law students write better legal memos, do better in their assignments, exams, and also help in terms of productivity and fitness. So if you do want to level up as a law student, you can go and check out the Fortis Circle community. It is also the top link in the description. And if you do have any further questions about the program, feel free to message me on my LinkedIn as well. Now, other pieces of work that you do as an intern or a clerk is a lot of document review and a lot of proofreading. So when partners or senior lawyers are preparing high-level contracts or high-level pieces of advice, they will usually get someone or a second pair of eyes to have a look at that document to make sure that there's no spelling mistakes, there's no typos, there's no formatting errors, and that is when you ultimately can come into place and help out in terms of that and have a second pair of eyes. And a good way to proofread those documents is to print them out in hard copy, have a red pen in hand, and make sure that you're reading them out aloud. Obviously don't yell it out, but sort of whisper quietly at your desk as you're going through the document. Have a red pen in hand, mark anything or mark any typos or formatting issues that you see, put it in red pen, and then if you have to go back to the document and track the changes, then you go and do that. I find that as a really effective way to proofread documents, and I've been able to find so many little mistakes and errors in my own personal work doing that technique as well. So a lot of work that you do as a clerk or an intern is proofreading a lot of work too. So something to keep in mind of. And if you are working in a litigation-based team, a lot of what you do is put together court documents. So affidavits, for example, you're going to be putting in exhibits of evidence when lawyers are preparing affidavits and they want you to compile the evidence. That is a lot of what you actually do as well as an intern or a clerk working in those particular teams. Sometimes you'll actually get to go to court and sit and listen into a hearing based on a particular bit of work that we've done for a client. So I know that a lot of construction clerks and interns, they got to go and listen to some court hearings, which is pretty cool, and kind of getting that experience of what it's like actually going and sitting in court and kind of getting that sort of sense of the court sort of vibe, I guess. And then when you're doing more front end work, so when I was working in the corporate team in my first clerkship, I was actually doing a lot of due diligence related work, so a lot of document review. So due diligence essentially means that if our client is buying shares or assets from another company, so they're called a target company, we will essentially look through all of their contracts, all of their documents, and ensure that there's no red flags in that target company. So we can advise to our client and say, hey, these are all the red flags that we were able to spot in this company, and this is what we recommend. So a lot of what you do as an intern, as a clerk in that team, will be reviewing a lot of constitutions, a lot of company contracts, agreements, leases, that sort of stuff. Now, at least from my experience, I want to actually stress the importance of the work that's given to you and why it's given to you. At the end of the day, the lawyers and the partners giving you work aren't actually trying to test you in any way. It is literally because there is a particular bit of work that needs to be done at a particular time. There might be lawyers in the team that aren't actually able to do that work at that particular time because they don't have that capacity. And you might be someone that doesn't have too many matters that you're dealing with. So typically they will be able to give that work to you depending on your capacity, and usually your capacity as an intern or a clerk isn't as big compared to other lawyers working on bigger matters. Another thing as well is that law firms are a business at the end of the day, and if we are charging 1.5k, for example, on a piece of advice to our client, it wouldn't really make sense for a partner who charges $800 an hour to do that advice. It would make more sense for more of a junior to do that work, or a clerk or an intern to put together that advice. First of all, it's sort of a good experience in terms of drafting and knowing how to draft an advice in commercial law firms compared to university, but also as well from a commerciality perspective, your rate is way less compared to a partner. It's usually around $250 to $300 an hour. And if that advice takes you to the whole day to do, then it actually fits into the scope of the fees that we estimated to charge that client. So from a commerciality perspective, it makes all the more sense if we're charging less money to a client for a particular piece of legal work that a junior, an intern, or a clerk is to do that work as well. And then the senior lawyer or partner can make sure they spend 5-10 minutes just checking over that work and making sure it's all good to go before they send that piece of advice or legal work to that client. At the end of the day, it's not necessarily about being the smartest person or the most technically gifted person in the team, because at the end of the day, there are lawyers with years and years of experience in that particular area who know far more about the industry compared to someone who spent just a couple of years at university and in law school, and also having only done a particular area of law for probably 3 to 4 months. So it's not necessarily about being the smartest in the room. It's more about having a great attitude, showing that you're willing to learn, and also just being someone that's just good to be around, because in the future, if you do become a graduate at that firm or you become a junior lawyer, and you may have to spend quite a bit of time outside or within the office, spending more time on bigger matters where you have to stay a bit later or you're coming in earlier, you're going to be spending a lot more time with your colleagues compared to your family. So at the end of the day, you want to be someone that's easily able to get along with. You can have a bit of a laugh. You're someone that, is humorous. You can also do things after work, like having lunches, going out for after work drinks. So you want to have those skills in place as a clerk or an intern early on. Be someone likable with a good attitude, being willing to learn. And even if you do make mistakes, as long as you're putting your best foot forward and always trying your best, that is all that matters, and in terms of being a good intern or a good clerk. So I hope this video serves as a better guidance as to what to expect as being a clerk or an intern going into some of these law firms. Again, if you do want to level up and you want to understand a bit more on what it takes to be an even better clerk, to do better in university in terms of improving your productivity, your health, your fitness, and ultimately just being a better version of yourself within the legal profession, you can go and check out my community, the Fortis Circle community. I'm trying to help out as much and many law students as possible and get together a really tight-knit community of like-minded individuals. So if it is something that you are really interested in, feel free to send me a message. It is the top link in the description. Check out my LinkedIn, check out my other YouTube videos, and I hope you have a great day. Thank you.